Hi, I'm Tom Burgess, and I'd like to welcome you to the second episode in From Here to Prosperity, a new podcast series on the Real Agenda Network. Now, the content of this series is based on a book that I wrote, entitled, as you might expect, From Here to Prosperity, and it was published in 2016 and outlined a new, practical, political agenda. Now, unsurprisingly, the problems that I outlined still exist today, and the solutions that I proposed are still highly relevant. Now, in the last episode, I gave you an overview of the 5 key policy proposals that would benefit the majority of the population, and we'll hear more about those in future episodes. In this episode, we're going to talk about the challenges to change and identify 3 key issues that need to be resolved if we are to move from here to prosperity.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creeds. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream.
The lack of progress since that speech was made in 1963 has been astonishing. A complete lack. Let many in the world be hungry when there is plenty. We live in democracies, but power is in the hands of the few. We are still consuming finite resources when there are many sustainable options. We are killing our planet, but we have nowhere else to go. We're imposing taxes on people so they cannot build a fulfilled life. And we allow the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. We agree with human rights, but we do not respect the rights of many humans. We are still fighting wars in the name of peace. Now, we could do better. We certainly could. And the research shows that most people would welcome change that brings a more equal society. So why hasn't it happened? And why isn't it happening? So the time has come again to join together, to realize that many more people could live fulfilled and purposeful lives if we took a more compassionate approach to our society, our economy, and our governments. It's time to put aside the divisions of the past, to move away from the traditional right or left wing rhetoric that can alienate, because it no longer unites. Now, I've interviewed a few members of Parliament for my podcast series, and also given informal strategic communications advice to a select group of MPs, and I found it particularly frustrating when politicians constantly boff on about the party as if it was the key audience. And we all know that the reason why David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister, called for the European Union referendum in the UK was to silence his sceptics. And, of course, he thought he could win. And now look what's happened. So I used to counsel these MPs to talk about what is good for the country, not the party, or rather not just the party, and to show leadership and to do the right thing for people over party. Now this can even be as bad at local level. Going back a while when I stood for Manchester City Council, and which I didn't win, but I was completely unimpressed how many of the members seemed more interested in winning the motion and scoring points against the other parties. The then leader, those years ago, is actually now an MP. And I went back a couple of years ago to Manchester to interview the current leader, Richard Leese. Well, he was then the current leader. He's just stepped down. And he gave me a different impression, as he seemed so committed to the people of Manchester, and he'd given a lifetime of service, having been a councillor since 1984, and that was soon after I unsuccessfully stood for the newly formed Social Democratic Party. So it's not all politicians, but it's a problem. It's not the government itself is not the problem. In fact, the government is the answer. This does not mean bigger governments, but better and bolder governments, with a purpose and a vision, with an agenda for peaceful but determined action to make the world a better place for many more people. Now, you know what it's like when you get a new job. You're very excited and you're full of ideas and you want to make changes. But often after a bit, you find that you get drawn into the system which makes change difficult. And this can be the same for our elected officials. I also had many examples in my communications business where we would spend ages to put together a great strategy and a plan for a client and win the business, and then despite our efforts and advice, this was often got diluted into a much less adventurous campaign. Sometimes not adventurous at all. But this is no reason to give up. We have to do what is the right thing to do. It's not difficult, but it's not simple, but it can be done. And the pivotal point has been reached. Unless we act, things could get out of control. What is happening now is not new, it's happened before, but we need to learn from our mistakes. We now live in an even more highly connected world with rapid communications and instant access to information. We should be wiser and more informed. Now, there are many good people with good ideas and intentions, but we need to be open to listen, to learn and to work it out. We've got a huge task ahead, but we are not where we could be on the path of human progress. Despite all the advances that have been made in technology, healthcare and communications, we still live in a world riddled with inequality, conflict and suffering. Almost all our problems stem from inequality of some sort, of wealth, of opportunity, of resources or freedoms. This is clearly demonstrated in the definitive research and the 2009 book called The Spirit Level, How More Equal Societies Almost Always Do Better. And this was written by Kate Pickett and Richard Wilkinson. The book highlights, to quote, the pernicious effects that inequality has on societies, eroding trust, increasing anxiety and illness, and encouraging excessive consumption. It shows that each of 11 different health and social problems, physical health, mental health, drug abuse, education, imprisonment, obesity, social mobility, trust and community life, violence, teenage pregnancies, and child well-being, outcomes are significantly worse in more unequal, rich countries. And just after my book was published in 2016, I took a trip to York to meet with Richard over lunch in the bar at the Station Hotel in York to discuss these issues and how they could be resolved, and of course to give Richard a copy of my book. And it was Kate and Richard that set up the hard-working and highly relevant organisation, the Equality Trust, which I had the pleasure to work with, and particularly with the then director, Vanda. Now, there's no excuse for poverty in economically advanced countries. No reason why it should persist. There is enough income generated and wealth to go round in a more equitable manner. So I want to give you some real facts that will bring clarity about where we are today, and these facts are indisputable. Then to move on to common sense policy ideas that, given the political will, that's the key, the political will, because we haven't had the political will, but if we had the political will, could make all the difference. But that's not enough. The greatest ideas are no good unless implemented. So I want to outline how the environment for change can be created. Once we have that, how policy ideas can be implemented in a realistic time frame. Before the answers, let's just review the problems to determine where we are now. Now, I've identified 3 major issues. While I've taken most of my illustrations from the UK and USA, these problems are applicable to most Western democracies and advanced economies. So I see it as 3 things. Extreme inequality and persistent poverty, number 1. 2, slow economic progress in the widest sense, not just growth for the sake of it, but growth in well-being. Number 3, we have a damaged democracy. Government isn't working for us. So in the next episode, we'll look further at these 3 major issues and what can be done to resolve economic and social justice and address the challenges for change before moving on to the practical answers and action we can take. Now, what do you think? I'd love to hear your views. You can email me at tom@tomburgess.com. The book From Here to Prosperity by Thomas J. Burgess, that's me, is available direct from the publishers at www.shepherdwalwyn.com. That's Shepherd, SHEPHEARD, Walwyn, WALWYN.com, or from all good online and local bookstores. From Here to Prosperity podcast series is available on the Real Agenda Network. You can listen and subscribe on all major podcast providers, such as Amazon, Apple, Google, and Spotify. There's more information at realagenda.org. Our special thanks to our sponsors, Switch, the workstation for your browser. Do you find yourself with too many tabs open and losing your space? Try switchextension.com. It's free to download. You can save yourself time. I do, and it's great. One thing is certain, people want to see change to a more compassionate and just society, as well as more courageous politicians prepared to do the right thing for people over party. It's not happening, but it can. It's urgent, and it's up to us to make it happen. We can end the unnecessary hardship suffered by millions every day if we kept the income we earn from our work and we shared more equitably the wealth that we all help create together. This can be achieved by a radical reform of the tax system, away from taxes on income to taxes on wealth, and also to use the tax system to encourage greater social responsibility. Now, I call this the inequality busting strategy of income for me, wealth for we. Now, that's how we get from here to prosperity. I'm Tom Burgess. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.